November 24th, during a ceremony at the White House, Larry Berra accepted the Presidential Medal of Freedom on behalf of his late father, Yogi. You know what, ladies and gentlemen? You can observe a lot by watching this episode of Mike's Entertainment and Sports Show, because Yogi wrote that book along with Dave Kaplan, as you could see. So we're going to go over to our hotline, and we are going to welcome in New York Times best-selling author and the founding director of the Yogi Berra Museum and Learning Center. If we can, let's welcome in Dave Kaplan. Dave, are you with us?
I am. Thank you.
Welcome, Dave. Welcome.
Dave, we showed a graphic of Larry accepting the award at the White House. I guess it's a little bit bittersweet in a way because it was posthumously given, but you knew Yogi as well as anyone. What would he have said? What would have been in his heart when he accepted that award?
Well, you know, Mike, he has received a lot of awards and honors throughout his life, but I think this one would have been very, very special. He wouldn't have said much, but he would have been very, very honored.
The New York Yankees held a night for Yogi in his remembrance when he passed away on September 22nd. He was 90 years old, as we all know. And the Yankees did, again, a beautiful tribute at the stadium. And a naval officer played taps on his bugle at home plate. And Girardi laid a wreath out, number 8 at home plate. And again, nobody does it like the Yankees. But again, when it comes to Yogi, it was kind of like a charmed life. And in this graphic, you have a beautiful blue sky. But you know what? You got a rainbow going over Yankee Stadium. Did that surprise you, Dave?
Nothing concerning Yogi surprises me. I mean, at our celebrity golf tournament, which are our biggest fundraiser for the museum, I mean, it would be like 5 straight days of rain, and then on that Monday, day of our golf event, it would be a beautiful sunny day, and we just call it Yogi weather. I mean, it was just that's the way it was with him. You're right, Mike. He had a charmed life, and very, very good things happen around him.
Well, you know what, we would have to ask you also, was there any point where the outpouring got to a point where even the family and even yourself, that again, you just said nothing surprises you, but then when you say, you know, I'm reading from New York City official website on that day, and in honor of Yogi Berra, former Yankee catcher, Navy veteran, and esteemed New Yorker who passed away last night, and I'm quoting from them at 90 years old, all flags shall be flown at half-staff by order of the mayor of New York City, Bill de Blasio. Every flag in the entire city, the World Trade Center was lit up in pinstripes. I mean, at any point, Dave, did the family say, well, you know, even knowing Yogi, this is kind of amazing?
Yeah, well, you know, Mike and Tony, we knew this would be big the day that, you know, eventually that he would pass, and you know, because of who Yogi is and what he's meant to so many people. But yes, I do think that the family was a little bit overwhelmed by the Empire State Building and by the outpouring, which was really worldwide almost.
Yogi Berra, you know, on-field accomplishments are well known, yet often overlooked is his service during the deadly combat of World War II. As a 19-year-old second-class seaman, Lawrence Berra played a significant part in one of the war's most important campaigns, the Normandy invasion, better known as D-Day. Yogi was one of a 6-man crew on a Navy rocket boat, firing machine guns and launching rockets at the Germans' defense of Omaha Beach. When you think of that, and you put it into perspective that all of that happened before his baseball career, you just sit back and marvel.
Yeah, I mean, he never saw it as anything very extraordinary. He just felt he was doing what everybody was doing, which was serving their country. There was a tremendous amount of sacrifice going on in the United States at that time. Everybody did their part for the war effort, and Yogi enlisted in the Navy. He had just been signed by the Yankees, played 1 year of minor league baseball, and as you said, at 18, and then when he was 19 by the time DDay came, and he just knew he had a job to do. These guys were trained for a very secret mission, and they were not allowed to tell anybody what their responsibilities, what their role was. But they did provide the cover for the Allies, for the GIs storming the beach, and they were shot at. Yogi had his hand was actually grazed by a bullet, and it was quite a thing. But he always said he always felt he was just too young to die, and was very, very grateful that he was able to survive and continue his life, and what a life it was.
So humble, yet such a hero. And as you said, we heard you on Yes Network, and you mentioned something that was very poignant, that they received the Purple Heart. He didn't even want it sent home, or he didn't even want anybody to know about it, because he didn't want anybody to be upset or be scared or worried about him. I mean, unselfishness was his middle name, and that's the way that was his credo, no?
He was very, very grounded, and I think that all goes back to how he grew up. Son of Italian immigrants, and he just basically, you said it perfectly, Mike, earlier. He is the embodiment of the American dream, and he just felt that if he did things the right way, if he worked hard, served his country, and did things proper, that good things would happen. And but he just never felt, even with all his rings and accomplishments, his MVP awards, he always just saw himself as a kid from the hill who got to live his dream.
You wrote so many books with him that I kind of tried and squeeze as many as I could into one graphic. But a lot of the yogiisms, were brought to life by your books, and you are a New York Times best-selling author. The one that really makes you chuckle is where it's your picture of Yogi with a whole bunch of wristwatches on, and he says, "What time is it? You mean now?" When you get to the fork in the road, take it. And then there's serious books with the 10 rings and what teamwork meant to him, and what he learned to be a Yankee. And when we opened with a Yogiism, another one of your books. You can observe a lot by watching. Dave, when you wrote these books with him, did you kind of what kind of experience was it for you and for Yogi as you wrote all these books together?
It was a lot of fun. Actually, what we try to do is just really have fun with a lot of his very famous quotes, as you just mentioned, and look at some of the deeper meaning behind those. And, so many of those quotes he actually did say. You can observe a lot by watching. He was a player coach for the Yankees in 1963, and he just knew, in that one year when it was kind of a secret that he was going to be named the manager the next year, he really kept a very keen eye on what everybody was doing, and so he just said that you can observe a lot by watching. Mm-hmm. But as far as the experience goes, it was enjoyable. We spent a lot of time together. We went to a lot of Yankee games. We talked in the car on the way back and forth. I asked him about all sorts of experiences, all sorts of situations that he had been in, and Yogi's life was just remarkable. I mean, just that, just the baseball, besides the baseball career, just the people he met, people he knew. I mean, he was close friends with Frank Sinatra. I mean, he went to Toots Shores, and he knew Hollywood people. But he was still Yogi Berra, and that was the beauty of it. But it was just a lot of fun, just hearing him tell stories and us trying to weave it into something that hopefully people found entertaining and informational.
Well said. You know what? He brought a smile to everyone's face. Anthony, my brother, said before we started filming, he said, at the end, he says, "I got a Yogiism," and you had a big smile on your face, Anthony. Let's not even wait for the end. What's the one that
Well, after all we've been saying, the one I like the most, he says, "If I had to do it all over again, I'd do it over again," and that kind of just sums him up, right?
I was there for that one. I'll tell you. I remember people have asked him many, many times, "Do you have any regrets? Would you do anything differently if you had your life to live over again?" He said, "If I had to, as you just said, if I had to do it all over again, I'd do it all over again."
Are you satisfied where you are and with the museum and his legacy?
I like to tell people I came to a personal fork in the road and I took it. I mean, I was, my earlier career was in newspapers, and I worked at the Daily News, and an opportunity came to really get the museum started, and it was in my community. I live in Montclair. The museum was starting on the campus of Montclair State, so I was thrilled to be part of something very, very special, a great community project where we teach kids, and we're able to showcase Yogi's remarkable career and life. So, am I satisfied? I'm never satisfied. That's what I learned from Yogi. And we do have a really kind of a unique challenge, and it's an exciting challenge to keep vibrant. Long after he's no longer around. But the museum was sort of a second home to him. He was so proud, so humbled of the place, and as he always said, usually when you get one of these, you're dead or gone. But he was fortunate enough to be around and enjoy it and talk to people there for well over 15 years.
Your name was brought up actually a couple of years ago when we had Harvey Arreton on the show. We have a graphic of Harvey sitting with us, and he wrote a book called Driving Mr. Yogi. And he just stopped, and because we said, "What's the genesis of all of this?" And he said, "I have to tell you." And he starts telling the story. He said, "My dog passed away, and I was down in the dumps, And he says, Dave Kaplan and his wife took me and my wife out to cheer me up, and under that, context or premise, all of a sudden he starts asking you about Yogi, and really you give him the idea for the book, Driving Mr. Yogi, and he credits you, and basically, I mean, that's kind of an amazing story in and of itself.
Well, Harvey and Beth, his wife, are great friends of ours, and we knew Shadow was very close to them, their dog, and so we decided to take him out to dinner and cheer him up. And as we're going to dinner, Harvey, I think it was February or so, and he said, what does Yogi do in spring training? When he goes down there, he was a man in his late 70s, 80s at that time, and I said, well, it's an interesting story, and nobody's really told it yet, and you might want to look into it. I said, Lon Guidry is his constant companion, and so Harvey's such a good reporter. You see the light bulbs going off in his head, and next thing you know, he's got a wonderful story that appeared on the front page of the New York Times, and all of a sudden there's people who saw a book possibility in it, and that led to Driving Mr. Yogi, which was really a great untold story about two generations, different Yankees, and just about a friendship and loyalty, and very, very funny also. So I give Harvey all the credit in the world for carrying. I was very happy to be a part of it, but he did a marvelous job of telling a wonderful, wonderful, timeless story about two baseball lifers.
Well, we all enjoyed that book, and we thank you for that, for steering him in that right direction, because, again, he gave you kudos on the show, no question about that, and again, he did do a terrific job with that. With that in mind, we're going to go over to our next graphic, if we can, and I'm going to tie it in with Harvey Arreton. I'm going to read something that he wrote in the New York Times on January 6th, 1999. And you might know where I'm going with this, but he starts off by saying, "Let the record show that a celebrated grudge held for nearly 14 years was dropped here a few minutes after 5 this evening when a contrite George Steinbrenner arrived at Yogi Berra's doorstep and thanked the self-exiled Yankee great for the opportunity to make this day necessary."
Thank
and he
goodness
said,
for that.
He says, "Hello, Yogi," and Yogi says back, "You're 10 minutes late." And he says, "I know I made mistakes, et cetera, like that." And he apologized. George Steinbrenner apologized, hat in hand, so to speak, to Yogi. Were you there that day? Do you remember it?
Oh yeah, it was. Yeah, I was definitely there. As a matter of fact, I actually went into my office, privately to talk for the first time in 14 years. And as you said, George did apologize, and Carmen was there. Yogi insisted she was there, and it was just really in the manner in which he was let go 14 years ago. Very disrespectful way. He didn't tell him, man to man, and he had somebody else let him know that he was being relieved of his managerial job, and Yogi held a grudge. He's very stubborn. He's Italian, and he held a really good grudge for 14 years. But it was a very tense time. I mean, no one knew what to expect. Steinbrenner was very, very nervous. He had always told people that he was afraid that Yogi was basically, when it was arranged by Susan Waldman that this meeting would happen, George was really fearful that Yogi was just going to shut the door and not let him in the museum. And, that's not Yogi. I mean, he figured that if this man was finally going to come up and, meet him on his turf and try to ask, to settle things or, ask for forgiveness, and Yogi would certainly do so. But it was really quite a moment, and it was 1 month after our museum had opened, Mike and Tony. So Harvey's story another story on the front page of the Times really helped get us on the map, and that also became national news. That makeup meeting, and it was quite a thing for the museum.
It was huge to all Yankee fans. I mean, my heart was pounding just listening to this. This was like a soap opera of sorts. And Susan Waldman did a great job, just as you said, Harvey, and then you guys with the museum, and it all just tied together perfectly in '99 when the Yankees were in the midst of their dynasty. And you just mentioned something in passing, so it's perfect timing. We're going to go over to our next graphic. You said Common. He insisted that Common be there. And, we feel very strongly that one of the things that makes Yogi so endearing, like when I look at him, I say, it reminds me of my grandfather and everything like this. And the beautiful thing is, and we have a graphic, we had in studio a few years back, Dave, we had Tony Ponturo, who's a Broadway producer. And he does, he makes the play, the Bronx Bombers. And he's sitting next to us, and he's telling about this play that hadn't opened yet. And we said, well, with Babe and with the Madge and with Mantle, who's the central figure? And he says it's Yogi and his wife Common, and we have a picture of that, and we have the two Broadway actors that played Peter Scolari, who a lot of people might remember from Bosom Buddies and more recently Girls and all of that. But that's just an amazing thing. And are we right about? I mean, isn't that what makes it the fairy tale even more so with the 65-year marriage and love affair between the two?
Absolutely. It was a great American love story. I mean, Yogi was this ugly duckling, basically, and he married this beautiful woman, waitress from St. Louis, and but Carmen was just, they had a wonderful, wonderful partnership, and she was so supportive and responsible, I think, for a lot of great things that happened with Yogi, and that play that you'd mentioned, which I really enjoyed, actually, and I thought the actress who played Carmen really captured her. As a matter of fact, when she appeared on stage, you just got a chill because they made her look exactly like her, and even Carmen was very touched by her portrayal. But that was how many sports figures today can you name have been married for 65 years and without any kind of scandal or anything like that? She was just a remarkable, lovely, charming woman, and she was so much responsible for so many great things that happened with Yogi.
And just a story that you just shared as an aside, when George Steinbrenner shows up, larger than life, I mean, in an intimidating figure, and as you said, Yogi doesn't back down to anybody. But he wanted his wife there too, like maybe
he insisted that she was there.
Right. Maybe he felt like maybe if he was going to lose his cool, or like you said, the Italian temper, maybe Carmen would kick him under the table, aspetta, take it easy, or something like that. But you know what? We're going to move over to the next graphic because I got to ask you a question. How did Brian Cashman talk Lindsay, the granddaughter, into rappelling down the tallest building in Stamford, Connecticut? I got to ask you that one.
Well, they're both crazy. Number one.
That's some
Cashman with climbing up these buildings the last 6 years or so. I mean, you got to wonder, but he does it, and he enjoys it, and so there's a real daredevil in him. Lindsay is an amazing athlete. She's a CrossFit athlete. She was the only female hockey player, at her high school team in Livingston, New Jersey, and she's just in great shape. And I guess Brian just said, "Well, I think someone had backed out or got sick or something." And Mrs. Claus, because Brian dresses as the elf, and he asked Lindsay to join him, and she kind of got coaxed into it. But she said she was pretty afraid, and she said she was particularly afraid with the bouncing part up and down that building.
She
But
made
she
it.
did it. She did it.
Lindsay really is very active on Twitter. She's kind of bringing it to the next generation, if you will. Is that a fair assessment?
Oh, absolutely. And Lindsay, is a board member too, so she's very active in a lot of the programs that go on, and also was, as we know by now too, the one who really spearheaded that social media campaign for Yogi to get the Medal of Freedom.
We have a lot of Yankee fans that watch the show, and they're savvy. They know the stats. They know that he's got the 10 rings more than anyone, more than DiMaggio, more than Ruth, more than Garrick. Everybody knows that, the 18-time All-Star and all that. But just one stat that really is quite amazing to me, and it never really got too much play. And I wonder, if you feel the same way. His ability to put the bat on the ball and not strike out is just amazing. Dave, is from 1946 to 57. That's a big chunk of his career, 2/3 of his career. He had 262 home runs at that point and 252 strikeouts. More home runs than strikeouts 2/3 of his way through his career. I mean, that is just phenomenal.
It really is, and he was a very humble guy. But I'll never forget the one time Nick called to my attention. He says, "Look what I did in 1950." He goes, "Look at the encyclopedia." I looked it up. He had 597 official plate appearances. You know how many times he struck out?
Well, I got to write. I'm looking at 12. Oh, I wouldn't
12.
have known. I'm deferring to you. Wow,
That's
Dave.
that's like 4 games for.
Oh my,
for
right.
guys
Unheard
today.
of.
That's
Today,
right.
right.
Yeah, that's a homestand for these guys today.
Right.
Just to put it into perspective, and I'm not picking on Posada, but he struck out 23% of the times of his plate appearances. And Brian McCann, who's a terrific batter today, I mean, he strikes out 16% of the time. Dave, Yogi struck out 5% of his. It's just really just off the charts. It just
He was such a feared hitter, particularly in the clutch, particularly in the late innings. I mean, that's the one guy that every team, every manager, there's interviews with Jackie Robinson saying that this, Mantle we weren't really that afraid of, but Berra, we never want to see him come up in the 7th inning on. But you talked about his size and stuff. He was listed during his career as 5'8", and obviously in his later years he was shrinking a little bit. But a lot of those guys too. It really didn't. Whitey Ford was 5'10". Phil Rizzuto, Hall of Fame shortstop, was 5'6". I mean, you just can't measure the heart of those guys. And I know that sounds a little bit like a cliche, but these guys love the game. They would do anything to help their team win. And Yogi really was a great all-around athlete, too. I mean, he always credits soccer for helping him in baseball. He was a terrific base runner. There was nothing on the ball field that he did not do well.
There's a stat that you're involved with that really jumps off the page. And we know the Yogi Museum with the rings and we understand all of that. But it's a staggering stat that the Learning Center, and it's the Yogi Museum and Learning Center, 20,000 school kids a year come through your doors, and you teach them sportsmanship and leadership. If you can, just talk about that for a moment, because that just sounds, 20,000 school kids a year, that sounds like a staggering number.
Well, it is. We actually did include school assemblies. We do a lot of off-site assemblies as well. We do bring in a lot of children. We have summer camps here, and what this is really is just an extension of Yogi's legacy. That's where the Learning Center part comes in. And he was, he lived a wonderful life through sports. He was always very humble, very respectful. He showed great perseverance, as you just alluded to. And basically, there's some wonderful, wonderful lessons learned on the ball field. And Yogi is a guy whose values are just worth promoting and preserving and teaching a younger generation about, he was all about helping kids. He was always giving back. And what he was trying to do, and what we're trying to do with our programs, is just give kids the best chance to reach success.
If anybody out there wants to make a donation, it's Yogi Berra Museum.org/donate, very simply. So make a donation, ladies and gentlemen. We know there's a lot of Yankee fans and Met fans on Staten Island. And so please do so, and go visit the museum, because
Very, very kind of you. We
Yeah.
really appreciate that. Thank you so much, and that's, we're very, very grateful for your friendship and support of the museum, and we do encourage people to come out and see it. We think it'll be really worth their while. We have a nice little theater where we show films, and I think it'll be a really an enjoyable experience.
Well, Dave, you know what? The Daily News had it partially right when they said it's over, because it's still not over because of the hard work of people like yourself and Lindsay and his 3 sons. His legacy will live on forever.